Hello everyone, you're watching Global Leaders Network, WINTV. I'm your host, Yoon. There are many leaders globally in areas such as government, non-for-profit organization, business, education, art industry, etc. Global Leaders Network invites these leaders and share their wonderful stories. Today, I invited someone from government, Chairman of Cook County Board of Review, Dan Patlak. How are you today?
Hi, Yuso. I'm doing fine, and I really appreciate your having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience.
You're welcome. Please introduce yourself. What do you do?
Well, I'm the chairman of the Cook County Board of Review. That's the office that reviews property assessment appeals. So if you have any listeners who own residential, commercial, or industrial property, and they think the assessment is too high, and as a result they're paying too much in property taxes, they can file an appeal at my office, the Cook County Board of Review. They can submit evidence. We will review the evidence, and if we think that their assessment is too high, we will lower the assessment, and as a result, they will pay less in property taxes than they otherwise would have had they not filed the appeal.
I see. So, what about senior? So, do you guys have any application for the seniors?
Well, senior citizens can file to get the senior exemption. They do that through the Cook County Assessor's Office, which is a separate office from my office. But to qualify for that exemption, you have to be 65 years of age, and you have to live in the home as your primary place of residence at some time during the year. And if you're married, only one spouse has to be 65. If you qualify for that exemption, your equalized assessed value is reduced by $8,000. Now, that's not $8,000 in property taxes, but it's $8,000 in equalized assessed value. And depending on what your tax rate is, it might be worth as little as $200, or it might be worth as much as several $1,000s. So I encourage every senior who's 65 years of age or older to apply for their senior exemption.
I see. Let me ask you some personal questions.
Sure.
Because I'm sure that you got interviewed numerous times regarding to your job, but I always want to know about you. So what was your dream when you were young?
Well, when I was young and growing up, I was always interested in government and public policy. Had lots of conversations with my parents and other relatives, but my dream was actually to be a professional football player. And not just as a little kid. I started playing organized football, contact football, when I was in 5th grade. And I did that for 4 years until I got into high school, and I played high school football, and I was a good player. I made all conference 2 years. I was the most valuable player in my team. And I had hoped to be recruited by a Division I school. Michigan was my favorite. Notre Dame was my second choice. But I wasn't big enough and I wasn't fast enough. So despite my successes as a high school football player, I didn't get recruited that way. I did end up going to Valparaiso University, which was a Division II school. I wasn't recruited there either. I walked on, but I made the team. And in my senior year, I was voted by my fellow players as the most valuable defensive player. But after that, I played a year or two of semi-professional football, but I was never good enough to become a professional. So instead, I went into politics.
Oh, I see. But what made you to run for office this time then?
Oh, well, as I said, I was always interested in public policy. And what happened was I was a realtor for 10 years. And that was something I was okay at. I made a living, but I didn't make any real money. And that wasn't really my passion. So I started volunteering on political campaigns. I eventually worked full-time on a U.S. Senate campaign back in 1996. I worked for the Al Salvi U.S. Senate campaign. He became the nominee of the Republican Party, ran against Dick Durbin, but Dick Durbin beat him. And after that, I did political consulting. And then I ended up getting hired by Commissioner Maureen Murphy, who was a commissioner at the Cook County Board of Review. She was the first Republican, the first suburbanite, and the first woman to hold that position. And so I worked for her for 8 years as her communications director and also as a commercial and residential analyst. And then after 8 years, Maureen was defeated at the ballot box. So I went back to doing some political consulting. But 4 years later, I decided, not seeing any other good Republican candidates, that I would run for the position that that she lost. And I actually was able to defeat the person who defeated her 4 years earlier. And so now I've been a commissioner at the Board of Review for the past 9 years.
Wow, great success story, by the way.
Thank you.
So then you already talked about this briefly, but how much political experience do you have? And also how long you actually work with the Republican Party? And we also want to know that what you want to change after you re-elected.
Well, I'd say I have a lot of political experience. I started as a volunteer in the mid-1980s, shortly after I got out of college. I actually volunteered for a national group called Citizens Against Government Waste. I became very interested in government spending and the amount of money that government was wasting. And so I joined this group, ended up being a local leader. We created a local group called the Taxpayers Action Network of Cook County. We staged several rallies downtown Chicago. I testified before the Cook County Board back in, I think it was 1992, when they were debating the original 3/4 cent county sales tax. And I testified against it. In the meantime, I was continuing with my political activism and volunteering on campaigns. And you heard me earlier talk about the Al Salve U.S. Senate campaign, which I volunteered on, but was eventually hired to be the press secretary. But later on, I was elected to a local school board in the village of Niles. And then later, I was elected to be the Wheeling Township Assessor. That was during the time when I was serving as an analyst at the Board of Review. But I always kept my fingers in campaigns, either volunteering or on a professional basis. So a lot of political background and a lot of interest in public policy. You mentioned what I hope to do at the Board of Review. We've done a lot already. When I first came to the Board of Review, you could only file using a triplicate piece of paper. You couldn't do anything online. So 9 months after I took office, we put online appeals on place. So instead of having to fill out the form and mail it in or deliver it, you could do everything from the comfort of your own home, type up your appeal and send it in. But an additional improvement that we made at the Board of Review, which was more dramatic than anything else, 4 years ago, we instituted the digital appeals processing system. And what that was we took a paper-driven system and we made it all digital. So prior to that, everybody that submitted evidence, it was submitted on paper. And it was put into a paper file and it was reviewed on paper and decisions were written down on paper. We changed all that. Now everything is digitized. If you submit paper evidence, we'll simply put it through a scanning machine. It'll be digitized, and our analysts, instead of looking at paper evidence, they look at evidence on a computer monitor. And instead of moving paper files around the office, now files are all electronic. If you want to move a file around the office, you press a button, it goes to somebody else's queue where they can review the file. So those are some of the really big improvements we made. One of the results of those big improvements was that prior to coming to the Board of Review, tax bills had been late 34 straight years. And when tax bills are late, that means that the revenue that goes to local taxing districts like schools and villages arrives late as well. And when that happens, they either have to cut programs or they have to dip into their reserves, which costs interest income. Some of them have to actually issue tax anticipation warrants, which means that you have to pay interest on bonds, and that's a net loss to taxpayers. We were able to hurry up our process so that tax bills could be sent out on time. So now for the last 8 years, tax bills have been going out on time, while in the previous 34 years they didn't. So we're very proud of that at the Board of Review.
I see. Do you guys serve in other languages?
Well, on my staff, we have people that speak Spanish, Polish, Hindi, Punjabi, Albanian. On some of the other staffs, we have people that speak Korean and I'm trying to think, some of the Slavic languages. And we do have complaint forms that are in multiple languages as well.
I see, I see. Recently, the Democrats passed a bill about the Reproductive Health Act. So I was always want to ask Republican Party, I know that you're pro-life, but what is your view on this?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm pro-life. So I'm against anything that would increase the number of abortions, because to me that just means more dead little babies, and we don't need any more of those. I think the Reproductive Health Act, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, had something to do with taxpayer funding of abortions. And I think it's fundamentally wrong to make taxpayers pay for abortions which are which violates their fundamental religious beliefs. So I believe it's unconstitutional. I don't know how it's passed constitutional muster. Somehow it has, but it's wrong. And I think we should all be striving for a world where we have no abortions.
I see. Tell us about the good and bad characteristic of leaders.
Well, the worst characteristic of a leader is someone who takes their finger, puts it up in the wind, and see which way the wind is blowing. In other words, what's public opinion? I'll just do whatever that is. Because that's someone that's seeking popularity. A good leader has a set of principles that they live by, and then they lead by those principles. So even if a particular point of view happens to be unpopular, you still have to stand up for that point of view if you think it's right. That's leadership.
What do you think about corruption of Chicago and also Illinois?
Well,
how can we change it?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, I mean, our state, our city, our county seems to be known nationally and even worldwide as being corrupt. And I think while there's truth to it, I think it's unfair. I run into a lot of taxpayers, voters in Cook County and Chicago, and they think politicians are all corrupt. And I know many politicians, many public servants, and most of them are not corrupt. But there are enough who are corrupt. There is too high a number of people who are corrupt, and they give government a bad name. And I think it's important that we root out that corruption. I think what the federal prosecutor is doing lately, we've all been hearing about raids on people's offices and homes and indictments for people that have been taking bribes and doing other illegal acts. That's good that the federal prosecutor is aggressive in that way. And I think that our Cook County State's Attorney should have the same aggressive nature in rooting out corruption, and as is true with our Attorney General. So, but what can we do about it? Well, it's hard to do anything about someone who is dishonest. So my advice to voters is be very careful who you vote for. If you elect honest people, you'll get honest government. If you elect dishonest people, you will get dishonest government.
Oh, that's a really good quote. I like that a lot. What is success to you, and what brings you happiness?
Oh, that's a rough one. You know, for me, success is being able to take care of my family. To provide them with the basic necessities of life. I have a wife, I have a son, only one son, only one child. And, you know, I was able when he was young to send him to parochial school. To me and my wife, it was important that he get an education, not only a good education, but an education where God could be talked about. You know, in the public schools, I don't want to say that repeating the name of God is not allowed, but I think it's frowned upon. And I wanted my son, when told how to behave, that instruction should be backed up by the Word of God. So we have something called the Ten Commandments. We also have the Golden Rule, and that came to us from God. And you know, when our rules come from people, from man, I don't think they have the same authority. And so when you send your kid to a parochial school, the teachers there aren't afraid to say, this is the right thing to do, and this is the wrong thing to do, and the reason for that is because God says so. So I was happy that I was able to afford to send my son to a parochial school. Now, when high school came, I gave him a choice. I said, you can go to St. Viator, you can go to Northridge Prep, you could go to Loyola, or you can go to the public school. And he said, Dad, I want to go to the public school. So he went to Buffalo Grove High School for 4 years, and I think he got a good education. And but by that time, his morals were set in stone. And so I wasn't as concerned that others might influence him in a bad direction.
Thank you so much. Do you have any comments to our audience today?
Well, I'd just like to tell your audience that the Cook County Board of Review is there for you. If you think you're overassessed, you can file an appeal. The best way to do that is to go to our website, cookcountyboardofreview.com. That's cookcountyboardofreview.com. You can click a button there where it says File an Appeal. It will take you to a portal. In that portal, you look in the upper left-hand corner, and it'll say Log On/Register. You can register an account. That account will be your account for you and your house in perpetuity. And you can file your appeal. You can submit your evidence electronically, or you can mail it into us if you don't know how to do it electronically. And then a few months later, you'll get an answer from us on whether or not you received a reduction. If you need help in gathering your evidence, I'll give you two good resources. One is my website, a website created specifically for people who are interested in filing appeals and learning about their property taxes. It's danpatlak.com, danpatlak.com. It's got lots and lots of information. It's got videos that you can watch which will instruct you on how to file your appeal and how to gather your evidence. The other resource is if you live in the suburbs, you can go to your local township assessor, and they're always there to help you out filing your appeal.
Thank you so much for coming to our station, sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Yesu. Nice meeting you, and thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching Global Leaders Network, WINTV. If you want to watch this again, you can watch this through our website and YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe us. I want to see all of you next Thursday, 9 p.m. Until then, have a blessed week. Bye-bye, everyone.